Morning.
Okay, now I saw people out there. That was a delayed response. Welcome to session 2, where our theme is the Gordon Commission's perspective, moving towards assessment for learning. My name is Ernest Morale. I am a professor of English education and director of the Institute for Urban and Minority Education at Teachers College, Columbia University. It gives me great pleasure to chair this panel of distinguished scholars from the Gordon Commission who are speaking toward what, in the opinion of many, is one of the most important educational questions of our time, and that is the future of education assessment. As the president of a 35,000-member organization, the National Council of Teachers of English, in our surveys of members, it is their number one concern, and that is what we're going to do with the future of assessment. In my brief remarks, I would like to frame the scope of the Gordon Commission's work, identify several of the key participants, and discuss some of its many accomplishments to date. I will then turn to my colleagues, Professors Robert Mislevy, James Pellegrino, Hervé Beren, and Ed Gordon, who will each present for 12 to 15 minutes. At that point, we will use our remaining time in an open discussion where we would welcome your comments and questions. So a little bit on the background of the Gordon Commission on the future of assessment in education. Led by Dr. Edmund W. Gordon, an endowed emeritus professor at Yale and Columbia Universities and the founder of the Institute for Urban and Minority Education, the Gordon Commission on the Future of Assessment in Education brings together leading scholars to consider what educational assessment will look like and what it should be capable of doing now and through the middle of the 21st century. The Commission's authors are distinguished scholars in the fields of education sciences, psychometrics, and public policy, and are thoughtful leaders in the arena of public affairs. Several are also deans at leading colleges of education across the country. Some of the members of the Commission include Eva Baker, Linda Darling Hammond, James Paul G., Louis Gomez, Kinji Haguda, Robert Mislevy, James Pellegrino, Lauren Resnick, Lori Shepard, Lee Shulman, Claude Still, Hervé Beren, and many, many more. During year one of the Commission, they explored what education is expected to become and should be by 2050. What will be the consequent demands on the educational assessment enterprise, and what technical and theoretical solutions to those demands are conceivable. During year two, the Commission turned its attention to the development of specifications for procedures, instrumentation, data management systems, and administrative policies and practices that are appropriate to the identified changing demands, as well as the development of policy positions that are responsive to those demands. This past March, at the release of its public policy and technical reports, the Commission's authors called on states to develop systems of assessment that go beyond identifying student achievement for accountability purposes and instead improve classroom instruction and provide greater insight into how children learn. This is a quote. Our conviction is that while the field of measurement in education has established a splendid history primarily directed at the measurement of education, the future of assessment in education will depend on the field's capacity to pursue assessment for education. And that is a quote from Ed Gordon at that Commission's meeting last spring. More recently, the Commission has held public hearings and symposia at the annual meetings of the American Educational Research Association, the National Academy of Education, as well as universities across the country, such as UCLA, the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, George Washington University, and Rockland College. Professor Gordon asked me to speak a little bit about the Commission's fellows and the work that they did since they're not able to be here. Complementing the work of the Commission's authors is the work of the Gordon Commission Fellows. The Gordon Fellows are a dynamic group of 6 emerging pre- and postdoctoral scholars in the fields of learning sciences, anthropology, psychometrics, the sociology of education, and education technology. These fellows were assembled to analyze and identify emergent themes, critical innovations, similarities, and distinctions, and ultimately synthesize the knowledge produced across the body of Commission papers in brief papers of their own. It was Dr. Gordon's opinion that the work of the Commission's experienced authors should be complemented by a younger generation of scholars who, in their ongoing dialogue with him and their syntheses of the more than 24 papers, would add new life and new ideas to the project. During their work together over the spring and summer of 2012, each fellow selected overlapping cross-sections of the papers to critically analyze and present for a series of fellows' lead group discussions of each paper, all under the tutelage of Commission Chairman Dr. Edmund Gordon and myself. The meetings of the fellows alternated throughout the spring and summer months between the Institute for Urban and Minority Education at that time in Harlem, and the Cetus Institute, a cultural, educational, and research foundation dedicated to improving the educational and social conditions for all disenfranchised people, which is located in Pomona, New York, right next to the home of one Edmund Gordon. In addition to Drs. Gordon and Morrell, the Fellows meetings were facilitated by Executive Officer of the Commission, Ms. Paula Henke, and attended by project consultants and the UME Assistant Director, Veronica Holly. These Fellows meetings provided a platform for the 6 emergent scholars to put the papers in the conversation with one another, with their peers, and with their mentors to create a rich, dynamic analysis. The Fellows meetings culminated in the production of 6 synthesis papers authored by the Fellows, providing their analyses, recommendations, major findings, and perceived implications for practice and instrumentation development policy. All of the synthesis papers are available at the website www.gordоncommission.org. So I wanted to provide that framing so you can understand a little bit of the scope of this project. We'll have 4 papers presented today and a discussion by Dr. Gordon, but really this is a work in progress that has evolved with the help of the Educational Testing Service over half a decade. It involved several dozen senior scholars as well as a half a dozen junior scholars. Policy and technical reports have been produced and disseminated this year. There's been a series of public events, and this is just the next phase of many. But I wanted to give you some sense of what these authors here today represent. So with that, I'd like to go. It's now my privilege to introduce Dr. Edmund W. Gordon, who will be offering the concluding remarks. Edmund W. Gordon is the John M. Muser Professor of Psychology Emeritus at Yale University. He's also the Richard March Poe Professor Emeritus of Psychology and Education at Teachers College, Columbia University, and Director Emeritus of the Institute for Urban and Minority Education at Teachers College. Dr. Gordon's distinguished 65-year career spans professional practice, scholarly life as a minister, clinical and counseling psychologist, research scientist, author, editor, and professor. He has held appointments at several of the nation's leading universities, including Howard, Yeshiva, Columbia, City University of New York, and Yale. Additionally, Professor Gordon has served as visiting professor at Harvard University. From July 2000 until August 2001, he was Vice President for Academic Affairs and Interim Dean of Faculty at Teachers College, Columbia University. The title of Dr. Gordon's talk and response is A Visionary Perspective on Assessment for Education, born of the Gordon Commission on the Future of Assessment. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gordon.
So thank you, Randy. Thank you, friends, and thank you especially to Matthew for putting together this meeting. You can see the excellently looking at the history of these ideas and notions and activities, looking at my colleagues and my effort at looking at the history and looking forward, and then astutely recognizing Hervé's point that these things don't happen automatically, they happen in a society. And because we have not gotten it right and are not likely to even the next time, some folk tell us about it. So that this afternoon, if you can spend the day with us, we'll have a session in which we talk about what's happening out there with the people who are the clients that talk. This letter reminds us that the profession is guided by. Very early in the life of the commission, I'll back a second, one of the strategies we used in the commission was the meeting of a group of what we call consultative conversations. We invited a few consultants, and seldom more than 5 at a time, sometimes only one. And we spent several hours consulting with them. But one of the things we were told early on was that the ideas that we were asking advice concerning were not really new to most psychometricians. That most psychometricians would even agree with them and would welcome the opportunity to deal with them. But the field is driven by the market. And if we really wanted to make a difference, we have to get out and convince policymakers, practitioners, and even the victims of these instruments of assessment that other things are possible. So what we set out to do in the Gordon Commission was to try to, my friend of mine, Dean Kent, suggested that we were doing the intellectual work that's got to be done in this area. We set out to do that intellectual work, and a large part of our effort went into the development of some pretty knowledge analysis, knowledge synthesis papers. Papers themselves are not available in the lounge. The report is, but the link to them is there. We will probably get them published in book form soon, but it is a trove of just valuable intelligence. Some of the best thinkers of the country that helped us think about a variety of issues that came before the commission, most of which we didn't resolve, we simply identified. And I'll end my remarks today calling a few of them to your attention. But what we were wrote about was trying to start a national conversation concerning the relationship between assessment, teaching, and learning. We advanced the notion that pedagogy consists of these three, and if they are appropriately articulated, we can improve what we do in pedagogy. If there was any point of consensus among these 30 or so folk who were my colleagues on the commission, it was probably around the notion that it is time for assessment to place this emphasis on informing teaching and learning. We begin our report with a beautiful and explicit history of the movement written by the historian Paul Kiesel. And it's a history of assessment of education. And we suggest early on in that report that what the commission is about is trying to move from that history of assessment of to a future history of the assessment for education. The paper that Gordon presented today is a small piece of the piece that he did for the commission, the larger paper. He calls it assessment in the service of education. Assessment in the service of education. Cliff can't be with us today, he's ill. He wanted me to emphasize another section of the paper, which I will not. He was trying to use assessment in literacy as an example of what he was talking about. Basically, he was suggesting that assessment is a critical feature of pedagogy instead of its being a judge of. Kind of is focused on the generation of data by which we judge what we do. Assessment can serve the function of informing what we do. In the release of our report out at UCLA last spring, Luis Gomez, who's a member of the commission, made a very interesting observation in his remarks. He said that the commission was visionary. He said if you go to those papers and to the report looking for a blueprint, you won't find it. He preferred to think of what we were about as serving the function of a North Star. It's the thing you should talk. If in the next year, it won't take another 125 years, but if in the next year teachers college and the other institutions around the country where we scholars hang out can begin the kind of discussions about this relationship between assessment, teaching, and learning that the Commission is advocating for. I believe these. I don't think in the near future that vision is going to be materialized. That is, we're not going to have a perfect test, just as we will not have perfect pedagogy. It's really a kind of moving target. But the origins of what we do in assessment may be advisory for us. The people who started this were scientists who saw their function as inquiring into things, trying to understand things, trying to generate better knowledge about things. If we in assessment can keep that as our view, not relegating to ourselves the responsibility of finding truth or making definitive statements about the statuses of people, but rather about better understanding how it is people develop and how they learn, and what humane folk who want to be or be doing. That's the Lost Star that Lewis was talking about. That's where we're headed. Now let me briefly call your attention to two or three of the kinds of issues that consume the attention of the Commission. The first one is almost already commented on. It's a movement or measurement, a movement from the measurement of the status of developability. A movement from a focus on the status of human abilities to their appraisal, their documentation, their analysis, for the purpose of not positioning, classifying, or selecting, or predicting, but for the purpose of intervening. We worried about the decontextualization of our assessment probes in a period when the epistemology is conducting us. To understand human performance, to understand human behavior, to understand almost any phenomenon, when one takes it out of the context in which it is functioning, it's hard to understand it. Bill McGuire, who has written two beautiful little essays on contextualism and perspectivism, reminds us that the human brain is limited in its capacity to deal with phenomena. So we do try to take out pieces of it. In the empiricist tradition, we try to control the things that influence the variations in phenomena. McGuire would say that in the process of doing that, we distort the thing that we're studying. We distort the thing that we're assessing. And the assessment product is a distorted interpretation, and distorted even about the thing that we would understand. Now, in the Commission's work, I had it in my list of items here, I'll simply jump to it even though I can't find it in my notes. We debated the appropriateness of the tradition of sampling, of which so much of assessment is based. Observation sampling is not as serious as the sampling of the instances of behavior by which we make judgments. Because as you draw those samples based on already distorted and contracted notions of what it is you're looking for, what we end up with is so far removed from the thing that we might consider to be important, and that is the functioning of this individual. Yet it becomes, in my view, almost immoral for us to make pedagogical or administrative or budgetary decisions based upon those kinds of data. But they are what we've got. They are a product of the history we've reviewed so insightfully today. Measurement science is become kind of the Mercedes test, if you want to use automobiles. It's become a really excellent model of behavioral sciences. Until the cognitive scientists came along and kind of enjoyed a special position in psychology because we were so precise, we were so scientific, it's such rigorous work. But the gains that we can make in the measurement of developability are big moments of lots of things that are made possible in our society by advanced psychometric science. It may be blinding on us to what education needs from measurement. I, as a teacher, don't need a lot of help in understanding who's not learning in my class or who has not learned. But what I desperately needed was help in reaching the folk who didn't learn. Could you go back to a little essay that Renee wrote, I guess it was the turn of the 20th century. He said those of us who have discovered techniques for identifying the people who are going to have trouble learning or who don't deserve it because they are underdeveloped. If we achieve that, don't we have some responsibility for doing something about it? So this tradition in the measurement of developabilities very useful for the society, but it will be less and less useful for the world that Kent was describing in his map, where the task of education is not going to be to best predict who can benefit. The task of education is going to be how to universally develop intellectual competence in a very, very, very diverse population of peoples around the world. The challenge to those of us who claim expertise in assessment is going to be to produce the kind of information, knowledge, the kind of even interpretation of what's happening with those people that enables us to develop talent, not simply to identify it. So thank you much for giving time and attention to this work. There's lots to talk about and read about it first, and thank you, colleagues, very much. With the Commission is the variety of methods and embedding assessment exercises, assessment processes in instruction itself. And down at ETS, and embedded is one of our commission's project that's called Capital. Dr. Chapter has a program she calls proximal assessment. I call it relevant assessment. I normally call dynamic assessment. But these methods integrating into teaching and learning transactions assessment curves. There's a little essay I wrote a year or so ago. I suggested that we might look forward to the time we don't test kids level, but we psychometricians go to the rich histories of these transactions and distill from it the kind of assessment data we need if the accountability of outcome or some of the judgments of in the deep. So there's a question about it. I understand you're asking the relationship between these new visions of assessment and teacher evaluation?
Correct.
I'm not sure that I would want to couple those, because as long as the assessment, focus of assessment is on what kids learn and are able to demonstrate, I view of the relationship between what happens in the learner and the quality of teaching until we come to a truly customized approach to instruction. I'm not sure that that's a good theoretical model. I once used to like the fairly cliche statement that if learning hasn't occurred, you can assume not much teaching has occurred. And I've seen some excellent teachers who have missed some students, so that I would much prefer, if we were going to be evaluating teachers, to evaluate what they do rather than what their students do with what they did. So before I spoke, I thought, very brief, Jeff, I'll try to make my point quickly and then you can do yours. I was in a discussion about 6 months ago with some people who take a conspiratorial approach to what's happening. They think that there may be a connection between the privatization of public education and the heavy emphasis on a punitive use of standardized tests. If we can demonstrate that public schools don't work, we can let the privates take it over. And given the amount of money that is represented by education, the education enterprise in this country, it is a lot of money to play with. And in a capitalist society where there's a lot of money, we know how to cycle profit from it. So these people will argue that we rush to implement an imperfect system, and it's even more imperfect than we thought. I think that we are using an old model when much newer models of assessment are available to us, but they're not going to be represented in this $300 million investment because of the limited conceptual question of what we're doing. So one of the reasons for rushing is to demonstrate that it can't work.